From the headquarters of the Guild of Champions, this is the Chris Terrell Podcast, and I am your host, Chris Terrell, and welcome to another week of your weight loss quest. How did this last week go for you, champion? What new challenges did you encounter? But more importantly, what failure did you go through? And tell me about the lesson you got from that failure. Don't you dare let a perfectly good failure go by without getting your lesson. That's your reward for your troubles. Now, if you're new here, I've lost 125 pounds myself after an entire adulthood of chronic yo-yo dieting. Up, down, again. Before I finally got sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I made some permanent, meaningful, and actual changes to my lifestyle, habits, routines, to my environment, community, and to my system of beliefs. Because all of those created me. And because I wanted permanent and lasting changes, that meant I was going to have to change all of those things so that I would change. And that's what I want to teach you how to do each and every single week here on the Chris Terrell Podcast. And if you enjoy the podcast, I want to invite you to join my free Facebook group. You can find a link to that by going to christerrellcoaching.com. You'll find a link there, or in the show notes. As well, in the show notes of this podcast, if you are a Spotify listener, I would love to hear from you. There's a field down there where you are able to leave a comment, leave feedback, and I greatly enjoy receiving them, reading them, and I publish them. I have no way to respond, but I do have a way to read them, and I'd love it if you'd send me a message. And if you're on the Apple Podcast platform, would you consider giving me a 5-star rating and a review, but only if I have earned it? Please give me a handful of episodes of listening to see if I earned that review. And if I did, I'd love it if you'd leave me a review. Welcome back to the next week of your quest. You know, a lot of people call it a weight loss journey, and I do believe that to be an accurate and good way to describe it. But I now, as someone on the other side, and several years into the other side, I really consider it more of a quest than I do a journey. Because like a journey, sometimes you're just doing it for the sake of doing it. But a quest, you're setting off to do something really hard and maybe something you've never done before. A quest usually requires the person to set off on it before they're ready. Maybe it's just time. A quest often will involve challenges, sometimes incredibly difficult challenges. Challenges that will take the hero far beyond where the hero believes is possible to go and still come back. A quest will give the hero those moments because it's in those moments when they are broken, when life has just shown up and beat every bit of arrogance they had out of them. That person still, because the quest was so important, they still had to dig in deep within themselves and find a greatness and let it out. And a weight loss quest will give you that if you'll let it. Now, some people, they don't want to let it do that. They want to find a shortcut. They want to hack. They want a trick. How do I be changed without going through the process of change? Because going through change requires pain. It requires often you to look at yourself in the mirror and go, how are you contributing? Change that. And yes, there are things outside of your control that are contributing to your dilemma, but you can't do anything about them. So stop worrying about it. Focus on what you can control and let go of what you can't. Early in my journey, I heard a quote. Well, not so much a quote as much as it was a speech from Steve Jobs. It was a commencement speech he gave, and in it he said, "Live each day as if it were your last. And ask yourself, if today was the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today? And if the answer has been no for too many days in a row, I know I need to change." He went on to say, "Remembering that you will be dead soon is the most important tool I have ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life. Because almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment and failure, dissolve into nothingness in the face of your own death. This leaves behind only what is truly important He continues, remembering that you will die is the only way to avoid the trap of thinking you have something left to lose. You are already naked, and there's no reason not to follow your heart. There's no reason not to follow your heart. I have discovered that reminding myself of my mortality on a regular basis, I have discovered that that helps. At first, it was very unpleasant to go there. The reason why it was unpleasant to go there is because it reminded me of all I had not yet done. It reminded me of all the things I wanted to do that I just hadn't got to doing because I was waiting around for something. I'm honestly not sure what I was waiting around for. Apparently, I was waiting for my dad to die. Sort of lame. I wish I wasn't waiting for that. I wish I'd have just did it sooner. But, I did it when I did it. But when my dad died and when I continued on, I started realizing that I too am going to die one day. One day will be my last. Often I was going through life just imagining I would die from old age, quietly in my sleep, and it'd be a non-event, and it'll be sometime so far in the future that there's no reason to think about it. But, maybe that was not something I needed to continue my whole life, right? I don't know that it was wrong that as a kid in my early 20s, I wasn't contemplating my impermanence. But I think in my 30s, it began to be an appropriate time to begin contemplating that, I'm 35, and what do I have to show for it? And when I looked around my life, I didn't like what I saw. I didn't like the job. I didn't like how I spent my time. I didn't like the money I had, what it was in. I didn't like all the stuff I had. I looked around this home I had. I was like, this is filled with a lot of stuff I just don't really care about. But yet I'm having this big home because apparently I need to keep this stuff because I can't get rid of it for some strange reason. And come to find out, this physical baggage in my real life mirrored the mental baggage in my mind and heart. I was toting around all sorts of emotional baggage. I just been carrying it around forever, waiting around for something. I don't know. For some reason, it felt like I couldn't get rid of all of it. Like, this stuff is mine. I may not like this baggage, but at least I got baggage. At least it's mine. It'd be better than having nothing. If I didn't have my baggage, what would I be? If I just let it all go, if I just said none of this happened, all this bad stuff, let's just say none of it happened, who would I be? What if I just woke up and forgot all that? Would I be alive? That opened up some existential questions that we're not going to get into for the podcast today. Oh, I just about caught myself there. I just about dumped into the deep end. We're not going to go into the deep end right there, Terrell. Stay up here. Okay. But let's go back to the quote from Steve Jobs here. If today was the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today? When I first heard that, there were a lot of days that the answer when I would have been, nope, today is not how I'd want to have spent my day. And of course, he went on to say, if the answer has been no for too many days in a row, I know I need to change something. And what I love about this is it's a realistic approach. It's not an ideologue. Taking this like, every day needs to be lived as if it were your last day on earth. What world do you live in? Right? Some days I have to go pay taxes. I don't mind paying taxes, but I don't particularly enjoy writing the check, right? Like, I preferred the money more when it was in my bank account, but I gotta do it, but I've only gotta do it a few times a year. It's not like a big deal. I've been sick a couple times in the last year. A month or so ago, I got stupid sick. That is not how I wanted to spend my last days, but it's just a few of them, right? Like, you can handle it. There's plenty of just days peppered throughout life that I don't want. But what it's supposed to be is these days should be sprinkled across life, and the majority of the days are days you are happy you're living. It's not supposed to be days you don't want to be living and a sprinkling of good days. I had it backwards. I would go through life, and my great days, the days I'm like, oh, I just don't want this day to end. I don't want to go to bed. No, this day's too amazing. That was a handful of weeks a year combined. Honestly, maybe a month or two of the year combined would make that up. I mean, that's kind of pitiful if you stop and think about it, because I stopped and thought about it. I stopped and thought about my life, and I looked back, and I'm like, a lot of these days aren't really worth remembering. The reason why I don't write anything down is because I'm like, yesterday was just like the preceding 50. There's no variety here. I do the same thing every day. And it's not like a boredom thing. It's not like I'm seeking that out. I was afraid to change. I got myself stuck. I'd made a bunch of decisions, and every aspect of life I had reached an impasse. Someone smart once told me, everything you want in life can be had on the other side of a few uncomfortable conversations or situations. And the reality is, what I had done is I had progressed every part of my life as far as it would go, to where the only way to go further is I had to have an uncomfortable conversation, or I had to endure an uncomfortable situation. That was the only way, right? Let's take my career. I'd moved it as far as I could. The only way to go further is I had to confront my boss. And if he didn't give me what I want, I'd have to leave. And both of these are incredibly unpleasant experiences to go through, and I didn't want to go through them. I was too afraid. I was too afraid to go through them. I was in a relationship I didn't want to be in, and I was too chicken shit to do anything about it. And I was unwilling to endure some unpleasant conversations. I was unwilling to inflict pain. And so I prolonged it and made it worse for everybody. Like, this is where I realized my finances, same thing. I had progressed as far as I could. The only way to get further is I had to start doing things like paring back my lifestyle. I had to start paring it back because I wasn't being wise, and I didn't want to do that. It was going to be unpleasant. And so back to the point. So I was looking around my life and realizing that the majority of my days are not days that I'd want to be my last. And that was unpleasant to realize. But as I just kept looking at that every day, eventually, I started noticing that I wasn't saying no as much. I wasn't saying, I wouldn't want to do this day. And that's been pretty awesome to get to that place. My life has just started being more filled with gratitude and appreciation and joy and pleasure, because I started focusing on having a good day rather than having a good week. Because I started thinking about it. What's a good week? Well, it's just a collection of days. And I got to thinking, like, is it 4 days are good? And then if it's 3 good days, now it's a bad week? Is it like a majority thing? Do I have to give each day a grade, and we have to have a cumulative score? Like, this was a 650 week. Unless it's an 880 week, I'm not happy. I don't know. I started thinking about my good week, bad week. This is hard to quantify. So why don't I just get really good at having a good day, right? Because if a week is comprised of days, if I get really good at having a good day, then most of the days of the week will be good, and I could probably be calling my weeks good. Well, go figure, when I started focusing on having a good day, I stopped caring about having a good week. I just stopped focusing on that because I'm focusing on having a good day. Just handling the day I'm in. And what was interesting about that is my life started shifting. Now, I didn't understand why. I've learned that later, and I'd like to tell you what I learned. It's because I started to become more present. I started to become more in the here and the now. I've read in the book Psycho-Cybernetics just several podcast episodes ago, live each day in 24-hour cycles. You can, of course, know a future's coming. You can prepare for it. That's no problem. But you should live the day you're in the day you're in, not yesterday. Don't live tomorrow today. Live today, and live tomorrow. Hopefully that made sense. I feel like that was a lot of today, yesterdays, and tomorrows. But stay present. And as I started focusing on staying in the day, I was becoming more present. And I started getting better at having good days. And this all could be traced back to me contemplating the fact that I'm going to die one day. And what is my life comprised of? There's a bunch of years. What is a year comprised of? A bunch of months. What is a bunch of months comprised of? A bunch of weeks. What's a bunch of weeks comprised of? A bunch of days. And I was like, well, yeah, let's just get really good at having really good days. That's manageable. I can manage a day far easier than I can manage a week. I mean, don't get me wrong. I can plan a week, but a week can get out of my control very quickly. Like, it don't take much for a week to just be completely thrown off. I've always been a time management junkie. My dad instilled time management techniques. He was teaching them to me when I was a teenager. And I was a Mormon missionary, and Mormon missionaries are like all about the planning. I don't know how they are now, at least when I was. I had the blue card, and you had to switch to the planner. And I came back, and I was all in the Franklin Covey system. I used to carry around a planner. Then I got into, when the virtual stuff started coming out, I started doing virtual. Like, I have been a calendar junkie for decades. And I would teach my management teams and how to manage their time, because I knew if they can manage their time, they would manage their worlds better and make my life easier, and everybody benefits. And then they have time management skills. It leaves them better, and I found them. And one of the things I would always tell people when I'm teaching them is start off with becoming good at planning tomorrow and then doing what you said you were going to do. Like, don't try to plan the week. You can put your big appointments in there. That's fine. But don't try to plan out the rest of the week. Like, just put your big appointments in there, leave those, and then don't worry about it. And I just want you to plan tomorrow. And then when you're going through tomorrow, see if you can stick to what you said you were going to do. And what I would do is tell them, just keep doing that for several weeks. And then when you get to the place where you can regularly plan tomorrow and do tomorrow, now I want you to try to plan 2 or 3 days out in advance. See if you can do that. You'll notice it gets exponentially harder just tacking on 2 more days, making it a total of 3 instead of 1. And then as you get better at that, try for a week. Because I knew planning a week and then doing what you said you were going to do is really, really, really challenging and very difficult. So become good at a day. And as I was wanting to manage my life, I started thinking back to that principle that I used to always teach my management teams. It was like, well, I wonder if this would work in my personal life, just going back to the day. And I started hyper-focusing on having a good day. And I started focusing, even planning my personal life. I used to meticulously plan my professional life, but my personal life got no planning or intentionality. Well, I started intentionally planning it. But as I started focusing on the day, I discovered something. Did you know a day is comprised of a bunch of hours? That was interesting. As I was focusing on the day, I discovered it became far easier if I learned how to just handle the hour I was in. Now, I didn't discover the hour. What I did was discover the block. Morning snack block. Lunch, afternoon snack block. Evening meal, evening snack block. I started thinking of my life in these terms because I was managing my hunger. But as I was doing that, I started doing that with every part of my life. I started thinking of all things of like, okay, well, what am I going to do for the next 3 hours? I got lunch coming up. And I want to be hungry around then. I need to keep myself occupied in case hunger shows up. Low-grade hunger, I don't really want to notice it. So I want to be busy. Well, what do I want to do for the next 2 hours? As I started regularly asking myself that, really bringing that intentionality, not reacting, but being intentional about what I was doing, this brought me down to having a good hour. And here's the crazy thing. Sometimes that hour is occurring in a really unpleasant situation. Like when I was first learning it, I could be at a customer's account getting yelled at for something that a cleaner did the night before that I wasn't even there for. I'm just the salesperson that sold it. I don't even know who the person was that was there because I'm just the salesperson. Well, the VP of sales, but I got that VP in front of my name, so therefore I must know everything that's going on. And so this person is ripping me a new ass, and I'm like, how I need to somehow have a good hour right now in the middle of this. And that was interesting because I had to start changing how I approached these uncomfortable situations, these unpleasant situations, like a customer yelling at me for something I didn't do. It's interesting, by the way, people, those of you that interact with your cleaning company, remember that the manager that you're talking to isn't the one that cleaned it. Stop murdering the messenger. I don't know who came up. Sorry, I'm hopping on a soapbox here for just a second. So let's put a pin in what I was saying. But I had a manager. His name was Jim Vosberg. Gave me just one of the best pieces of advice a manager has ever given me. I still remember it to this day. He walked up to me and he said, because I used to go to the meeting every week and just get my ass ripped by the client for everything that was done wrong the previous week. Because that's apparently how people think they need to manage people, is you have to just demoralize them. And so I'm in there going to this meeting, and my boss said, now you know what your job is, right? And I just started there. And I was like, yeah, I got a take this and go deal with it with them. He goes, but how are you going to present it? Now, I had intended to be nice, right? But like I was upset, people had been yelling at me. So I was going to let them know like, hey, they're all really upset. All the customers are bothered. Like I wasn't going to yell, but I was certainly going to let them know that the customer was extremely upset. He said, don't do that. He said, have you heard the phrase shit rolls downhill? I was like, well, yeah, that's how this works. I kick it down a little bit. He goes, no, you're an umbrella. What do you mean? He said, your job isn't to let the shit roll downhill. Your job is to stand over your team with an umbrella. Well, that was an interesting concept to think of it. He's like, are they going to work well if they have this kind of pressure? No, probably not. He goes, so keep the pressure from them. You need them to do the job. You don't need them to have the pressure. So your objective is to get them to do the job. So go get them to do the job, and they'll do the job if they're happy. So go take care of them. Wow. I mean, talk about a powerful life lesson, right? Gosh, that was one of the best pieces of advice. Anybody that's ever worked for me, I have passed that advice on to them. I mean, it was just brilliant. Jim will probably never hear this podcast. But if Jim Vosberg, if for some random reason you're listening to this, thanks, man. That was like such a valuable piece of wisdom. I don't even know if you remember giving it to me. So many years in Washington, D.C. All right, let's get back to the topic of what I was talking about. I went off on a total rabbit hole there. My life at the beginning of my journey wasn't how I wanted it. And now it is. And one of the biggest things I can attribute it to was to that period of time where I began to start taking my life an hour at a time. And I'd have a customer sitting in front of me yelling at me. And in my own mind, I am telling myself, how do we turn this into a good thing? I'm like, I don't want to. How do I use this as a good thing? How do I make this not bad? How do I make it where I won't regret this hour? And that right there was a powerful discovery that I made. How do I not regret this hour? Some hours in my life, I at the time would have been happier if they were deleted from my life. They didn't exist. Except that's not how it works. Because when you're in the moment, it exists. You can delete it from your mind retroactively by way of amnesia, by way of forgetting, right? There's all sorts of things from my past that don't exist anymore because no one remembers them. The things that exist because I remember them. They're not here. But what's happening now is happening. And when I started asking myself, how do I not regret what is happening right now? I made an incredibly powerful, life-altering discovery. You see, until that moment, I was regularly asking myself, how can I stop regretting my past? How can I stop regretting what I didn't do? How can I stop regretting what I did? And when I started asking myself, how can I not regret what's happening right now? I was basically saying, how can I not regret what I'm about to do? I started evaluating my present actions through the lens of, am I good with this or not? I started to become conscious to my present self. And this is what my weight loss journey taught me. This is why I was sad when it was over, because I was worried that I wouldn't have something like this that made me get to know myself in the present. Because to lose 125 pounds and keep it off, it required me to be present with myself for way more of my life than normal. I would check out into habit energy and escaping into TV, movies, and social media and video games and escaping into food. I was either dedicating my life at work or I was escaping. I wasn't living my life in the present a lot of the time. But if I thought back to things like my vacations, why did I enjoy them so much? I did everything possible to be present. I have an interesting litmus test for my life, and it's a little judgy, but I'm going to tell you because it's my truth. I think that if you are sad when your vacation is over, That is sad. I lived a lot of my life where when vacation was over, I was sad because it was over, because I didn't want it to end. I didn't want to go home. Vacation was far better than home. I now live life where vacation is just different. It's not better. I now want to live a life I don't need vacations from, but that I still take vacations from. Because when you don't need the vacation is different. It's more relaxing. It's relaxing in a way I never understood. You see, in the journey, when I became present, when it was really, really hard, when it was easy to be present, like on vacation, it was essentially automatic. It was so easy to stay present. It is so easy to stay present when it's easy to do so now. And that is because I practiced being present in the hardest moments, the moments I wanted to escape the most. How did I escape my emotional eating? Much of the time, it's because I discovered that I could be intensely present with myself. And yeah, sometimes it's really unpleasant there. The trick I discovered is not to stop the pain. It's not to stop the hurt. The trick is to not mind that it hurts and that there is pain. That's the trick. That's the key to overcoming the emotional eating. It's actually feeling the pain instead of numbing out and running from it. It's acknowledging that a part of your life is not how you want it. It's acknowledging that you feel under control. It's acknowledging that you don't feel free. It's acknowledging that you don't like what you see in the mirror. It's acknowledging that you want more than you have now. And if you're stuck, if you look around your life and realize that you are not progressing because every part of life has reached an impasse, every part of life, the only way to move forward is by way of an unpleasant conversation or an unpleasant action, you're going to stay stuck until you overcome this. And the way I overcame it was by finding the present moment. My weight loss trained me for it, and I'm so glad it did. Because maintenance was a bear. It still is. It's easier than weight loss. Don't get me wrong. It is easier than weight loss, and I enjoy it. And it is far better than being fat. But it is by no means effortless. Like, if we're talking which one takes more effort, maintaining or being fat, maintaining takes more effort than being fat. Like, just no ands, if, or buts about it. Like, yeah, every week I am working on it. Now, some people, they don't do that. Some people, they don't mind gaining 10 to 15, 20 pounds and slipping down. That's fine. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, I personally prefer a 5-pound window. Maybe that'll change in the future, but I know this. I don't want it changing outside of control. I want to play a part in that decision. But these are topics for other days and other podcast episodes. Thanks so much for being here every single week. I'm so excited that I get to go with you every week on your journey, and I hope these podcast episodes really help you out. I truly do. If you're looking for more support, if you're looking for more encouragement, and you're ready to level up that weight loss journey, if you're finding it's very lonely and you could use a supportive community, or what if you're looking to get that next level of immersion where you want to fully immerse yourself in the pursuit of your dream of obtaining the body and life of your dreams, and you want to associate with nothing but people that are just as serious, hell, in fact, often more serious than you, well, then the Guild of Champions is the place for you. If you're interested in learning about the Guild, head on over to theguildofchampions.com, and I'd love to tell you a little bit more about it. Have a great week, champion, and I'll see you next week on the Chris Terrell Podcast.